I am so glad to be hosting this webinar along with Marc Fournier. He's the Academic Director, Specialized Master in Innovation and Entrepreneurship. I also have with me Emily Benayad, HR Operating Director, and Nathalie Quentin-Geselius. She is responsible for recruitment and the promotion manager for the Master in Management and the Master of Science program. Okay, Paula just joined and she's saying hello from Spain. Let's do a round of introductions, everyone. I'm going to unmute you all, please. Marc, Emily, Nathalie, could you please introduce yourselves? Let's start with Emily.
Okay. Well, good evening, everybody. Very pleased to be with you tonight. As we are talking tonight about international background and experiences, I will introduce myself through this angle. So if you know my last name, I'm Stevlan Benayad, which is Belgium and Moroccan from my husband. So I'm half French, a little bit Belgium, a little bit Russian, and married with a Moroccan guy. So my personal life is already a mess. From a personal background, from a professional background, I studied half in France and half in Spain, so I graduated in both countries. And then I started my career in Spain, and then in France, and then Morocco and Tunisia, and then back to France. And I spent my career mainly in HR. So very happy to share with you my experience and my insight on how international background can be a very big boost on your career.
Thank you very much. What about you, Marc? Where are you from?
Hi, guys. Nice seeing you or hearing from you. Hopefully we'll get lots of questions tonight. I'm half American, as you might be able to say, half French. And I can put on the French accent if you prefer. Depends on circumstances. So I was born in the US. I grew up in France. I did my a double high school diploma, both France and in the US. And then I went to undergrad in the States. I went to graduate school in France in 2 different schools, one of which was ESCP. So I did some of my classes and graduated from ESCP. My entire career has been around entrepreneurship. And I started companies pretty much around the world, South America, Europe, US, different types of companies. Today I run a venture capital fund. And most importantly for this conversation is I've been teaching at ESCP for the last 20 years now. And my teaching has been involved. I'm the dean of a program which is called Innovation and Entrepreneurship.
Thank you very much, Marc. Our speaker, Nathalie, please.
So welcome. Hello, everyone. So my name is Nathalie Quentin-Geselius, and just like Emily was saying, I also have an international family. My family name is French, and the other part is Swedish. I studied in France, international degree, so it was a major in languages, English and Spanish. I started working in the US, so I spent a couple of years in Denver. And I started working in education 13 years ago. So my first experience was with HEC, another business school. And I've been working with ESCP for the last 10 years, first in executive education, and for the past 4 or 5 years with the Master in Management. So in that role, I actually get to travel. Before the COVID, I used to travel around the world, so meeting students from all continents and going to India, China, Russia, in the US, so meeting all of our international students, and we're here today to answer your questions.
Exactly. I'm going to be asking our speakers questions about studying across multiple countries. You can send your questions throughout our conversation using the Q&A section. We will answer all of those too. So please submit the questions, concerns, curiosities in the Q&A section. I would like to address the first question to Mark and Emily. And how does having an international background change the way you think? Emily, please.
Well, I will answer by an example that I've been living in my real life. When I moved from France to Morocco, I used to think my work-life balance from a very French perspective. So a very French perspective means during the week, I'm fully dedicated to my job. And during the weekend, I'm fully dedicated to my personal life. And when I arrived in Morocco, my boss was calling me every weekend. And at the beginning, I was like, what's wrong with her? Is she expecting me to work 7 days a week or 24 hours a day? And I was like, what's wrong with her? And then I realized that when I had to do something for my personal life on Monday afternoon or on Tuesday morning, it was not an issue for her. And I realized that she was not expecting me to work anytime. She was expecting me flexibility, but she gave me a lot of flexibility on the other side. So it was not a better or worst way to see work-life balance. It was just another way to see work-life balance. And finally, I really appreciated this way of working.
Do you agree, Mark?
Yeah, I think there's lots of advantages of studying abroad and experiencing different cultures. First of all, on a very scientific level, it's a proven fact that having experience, having been in front or faced, like for example, the example of Emily is very interesting because she goes from a single-minded approach to something that has to open up her horizons. And what you find is when you're faced with those problems over and over again, it actually changes the functioning, the fundamental functioning of your brain. And people who are international, who are multicultural or have lived abroad for many, many years are much better at problem solving when it's thinking out of the box than somebody who has one culture. So that's I think one level that's important. The other level, which is not on the brain level, but the way of doing things, and I think Emily illustrated that very nicely, is having different cultures, being able to see different cultures, experience different cultures, see how those different cultures solve problems. Because when you either go back to Spain, to Italy, or your home country, you'll actually have an advantage for having seen different ways of doing things. In the same way, if you're Italian and you're living in France or you're moving to whatever other country in the world, you'll actually have a much wider background than if you have just one experience there. The earlier you start, the better in terms of age. The more flexible your agility, your brain is, and your agility, and all those baggages actually accumulate, and you keep those for the rest of your life. So yeah, definitely international background is a big plus, and it changes the way you think and you approach problems.
Perfect. Do you guys mind giving us a concrete example of how this international background impacted your career? Are there any recent experience that you think fit this argument, this topic we're talking about, Mark?
In the year 2000, I moved to Silicon Valley and spent 5 years from 97 to 2002. And at the time, Europe, so I consider myself as a European, Europe was way ahead in terms of mobile phones. So Apple still hadn't come out with the iPhone. I'm just putting things in context here. And there was a super company called Nokia, which nobody knows now anyway. But anyway, just to kind of put things in perspective. And when I arrived in Silicon Valley, the big thing there was e-commerce and the development of e-commerce, and having this head start on telecom and communications actually enabled me, when I started companies in the Valley, to combine the best of internet commerce and telecom. So I was one of the first ones to use, anyway, I won't even go into the programs that were used at the time, but using phones as a means of doing e-commerce. And once again, that's before the iPhone. So combining things that I found on one continent, bringing it to another continent was very helpful, even in matters of technology within Silicon Valley, which may sound surprising, but clearly I had things to bring to Silicon Valley. It wasn't a one-way road.
Interesting. That's very interesting to hear. What about you, Emily, in the context of human resources? Do you have any concrete example for us?
Yes. Well, first of all, my decision to go in Spain to study there and then to start working there was a very big plus for me, because I was perceived as somebody with an international background. And when I went back to France and then I decided to go back abroad again in Morocco, it was a key success factor for me to get this job, because I had an international background, so I could prove that I was open-minded. I had some agility to manage different culture, and the opportunity I had to go to Morocco was incredible for me. I was 29 years old, quite young, and I had the chance to get an opportunity that I would never ever had if I had stayed in France, because I became HR director at 29 and HR director of an engineering company that we built from zero and grew up from zero to 1,500 people in 4 years. So it was an amazing adventure. And I am perfectly aware that I couldn't have this opportunity without taking the risk to go abroad and to have an international experience.
Wow, that's very impressive at 29. Natalie, how old were you when you lived abroad or had an international experience, and for what purpose?
So the first experience, I was 20 years old. So that's when I went to the US. It was my first time abroad and first time going so far away from France, actually. And it really taught me a lot, I think, on a personal level. And of course, I think it taught me a lot that I'm using now every day in my role, because it taught me to be flexible. I would say, to echo what Emily was saying, you can't expect everyone to have the same frame of reference. And in my role now, when I meet with students coming from different parts of the world, I can't assume that they understand everything that, for example, the school stands for. And I can't also make assumptions about their background and what they've been doing. The education system is very different from one country to another. And I really have to put myself in their shoes, and you have to understand the culture before you can approach anyone. I think it's true in any industry, but it's very true in education. You really have to understand how the country works, and it does impact, what students end up choosing as a specialization. For example, I mentioned trips to India. You have to understand how the country works if you want to be able to recruit the best students. You can't really just show up and assume that it functions the same way. So I think, yeah, the main takeaway from my first experience is really to forget about your certainties and what you think you know, and if you think you know best, just forget about all of this. Try to put yourself in the other person's shoe and have some flexibility. So
Definitely, I see our speakers, the other speakers are nodding too. Definitely something to think about and something that I would like to deepen. We have talked about these international experience, and everybody thinks it's such a wonder, right? But there are issues and difficulties. So I would like to hear from our speakers. What do you find is most difficult with the international experience, and how do you overcome these difficulties? I will pass the baton to Mark.
Okay. Yeah, one of the reasons why one goes abroad is also to be able to go outside of your comfort zone. And every time you go outside of your comfort zone, you both learn a lot, but there's also downsides to that. And a lot of the downsides to that are personal. You're leaving your family, you're have to make new friends, your different foods, different ways of living, different language. And learning a language, or even being even if you're not learning the language, the fact of hearing a foreign language all the time gets to be super tiring. It just wears you out. You know, the first 6 months are really tough because it's an effort where when you're at home and you are Italian and you listen to Italian TV and the radio's on and people are speaking, it doesn't cost you anything. When you're abroad, all those things actually cost you. So there is a mental condition in which you have to be in to be able to go out and go discover new foods, new languages. So I'd say that a lot of our, those are somewhat of the downsides. It's going to take you several months, up to a year, maybe more, to feel really comfortable in a new country, to make new friends. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. It might take you a year the first time, it might take you 9 months the second time, and by the time you're in your third country, you're actually doing it in a few weeks, and you're setting up. And that's what's fantastic about it. And that's what you actually keep for down the road.
Definitely. Emily, would you like to add something to that?
Yeah, but I totally agree with Mark. And I remember when I first lived in Spain, I had headache every evening because it was an effort to hear Spain and to speak, to hear Spanish, sorry, and to speak Spanish every day. And for example, in my job, people were sometimes doing jokes and I didn't understand the joke. So it was hard to, to be integrated in the team and to feel really part of the team, even if people were very kind with me, because there were some barriers in terms of languages. And even when I went back home, I remember that I was watching The Simpsons at TV, and even The Simpsons at TV were giving me a headache. So it was it was an issue, and but it was also a fantastic learning, a fantastic learning.
So even the smallest things can trigger an anxious response from us when being abroad, right? So even, as you said, The Simpsons can make us. What do you think, Natalie?
I completely agree with Mark and Emily. I think the first thing that came to mind when we mentioned the issues that we could be facing from it was the language. Coming to the US and having learned English in school, I thought, it will be easy. The first few weeks, it was really, really hard because with a strong French accent, I think most people just don't understand you at all. I was in a part of the US where there were not that many tourists at the time. And in a lot of cases, I was like the first French person that they met. So it was a very steep learning curve for me. But I think I learned, and I had, again, to really adapt quickly, and I had to really make things work quickly because I was working and it was expected of me that people would understand me. So definitely the language for me. And then maybe it's more subtle, it's the culture. You think also being French, you're going to the US, you don't feel like there is such a huge gap, maybe at least when I was 20, that's the way I thought. And it's a bit more like everyday conversations that you think are very normal in the US that you really can't mention in a conversation in France. And that was a bit surprising in the beginning. You know, people ask you, what's your religion, or how much money do you make? And those were questions that I was getting, which I would never really be asked by staying in France. So again, I felt that was interesting because that's putting you, like Mark was saying, out of your comfort zone for sure. You don't necessarily expect the unexpected, and when you get those questions, you have to think on your feet and try to understand: am I expected to reply? Is it rude if I say, something? Maybe they expect me to not say anything. So it's really interesting. Yeah, I think it makes you so much more understanding also. So, yeah.
Thank you all for providing us good, excellent examples. I would like to talk to Mark and Emily about some examples that you have had to demonstrate openness. Can you think of any recent situations in which you had to think, okay, I think I need to show some humility now? Mark?
Well, let's just say that one of my jobs is to run a venture capital fund, and I work with approximately 50 different entrepreneurs at the same time. And clearly, being faced with entrepreneurs who are starting companies, developing them, facing COVID. Right now, one of the companies I work with has gone from several $100 million in revenue to zero overnight. So I think that this flexibility, this just gymnastic, this understanding of the others, understanding people, and working with them with their strengths and weaknesses is also part of this international experience. It helps you be patient. It helps you not take things personally, but understand that people are actually out there to do their best. And sometimes they may be faced with different challenges and different problems that you have to help them out with. So yeah, I did clearly without going into specific examples on a day-to-day basis, this is definitely a tool that I use all the time.
Thank you very much. Emily, same question, please.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I have a concrete example on that. I think that it's more an along the way attitude, but I really think that it is thanks to openness and humility that you get the best from your professional environment, from your boss, from your team, from your colleagues. Without that, you don't create deep and strong professional relationships.
Understood. Natalie, do you think that this openness and humility that Mark and Emily were just talking about is part of ESCP Business School DNA?
Well, yes, hopefully, yes. It's very much the mission of the school to provide education, cross-cultural education. So we're really about providing education for students across our different campuses. So I didn't mention, but we have 6 European campuses in Paris, London, Turin, Madrid, Warsaw, and Berlin. And it's across all of the portfolio of programs that we offer. Everyone is expected to study in multiple locations. So it's very much part of the identity of the school, the European identity. You can't just choose ESCP because you want to study in Paris or because you only want to study in Turin. So it's really expected of students that they will be moving across the different locations at some point. And I'm talking about a portfolio ranging from a bachelor degree, so an undergrad, all the way to the executive PhD and everything in between. So even for more senior professionals, I'm not talking only about younger students, they're also very much expected to travel. And you have a very international faculty, which you can see tonight, and also a very international cohort. So again, whichever program we're talking about, you always have students coming from around the world. And that also provides, I would say, another dimension of diversity, because everyone is bringing their culture and their experience to the table. And when you study in a business school, it's not only lectures where you take notes and you listen to a professor. It's very much about, yeah, it's very practical, a lot of real life case studies, teamwork. Students are often expected to work in teams on projects. So they're faced with the same challenges that we discussed before. They have to work together, and they have to come up, with some strategic recommendations. They have to all agree on sometimes one specific outcome. So even if everyone is coming from a different background, they have to learn also from the rest of the class, and they can't think, oh, I'm the expert, I have an engineering degree before, so I'm the only one that can answer that question. I think they have to really work intelligently together, and that's very much what the school is about, to provide that multicultural business education.
And if I can just jump in here, I don't have Natalie's overall view who sees the entire school. I'm responsible for just one master's program, and more than half of the class that I run every year comes from all over the world. And in a way, all these people come with different experiences, bring them all into one area at one time. And once they're out of the school, they all disperse again. And what's fantastic is I find my students all over the world, whether it be in Asia, South America, North America, all over Europe, a lot of African students as well. And I can really attest to the international dimension and the melting pot that this represents, and everybody bringing in their culture together, enriching the other students, and then exporting that throughout the world in a network of people who stay in touch beyond the school. And that's something that's incredibly rich.
Okay, thank you very much to Nathalie and Mark. I think that it's safe to say that the expression new normal is the 2020 expression. So I would like to debate how does the new normal affect the career, will affect the career in the next 10 coming years. Emily, what is your vision?
Well, despite the current situation and the COVID new normal expressions, I think that career has evolved a lot in the last generation, and will continue to evolve a lot. And if you do just look at the past, for your grandparents, their career were spending their whole life in the same company doing the same job. For your parents, it was spending their whole life doing the same job in different company. For you, it will be doing dozens of jobs in dozens of companies, and probably not in the same permanent contract we all know today. Many studies are saying that this permanent contract could even disappear and be replaced by a mix of being a freelance, being an entrepreneur, have short-term missions, have long-term missions, but the future will be flexibility and agility. And I think that having an international background and international experiences when you study will be a huge asset in this new career world.
Mark, what about you? Do you think that being a chameleon will be the answer in the new normal?
Yeah, I think there's no hesitation, but I fully agree with what Emily just said. It just makes huge amounts of sense. There are going to be two things. One is that you have to learn how to learn. And that's one of the things that we work at ESCP, is making sure that people learn how to learn. And because you're going to be learning throughout your whole career. And second thing that you're going to need is flexibility. And I think we're put right now with the coronavirus in extreme conditions, all of us. And I hope all of you are well as well as your families. But we're faced to having to reinvent ourselves. We're faced to having to be flexible. We're faced to having to deal with constraints that were unacceptable a few months ago. Imagine if a year ago we had the same webinar and I had said to you, you'll see in a year from now, everybody will be wearing face masks. You would have said that's impossible. I'll never do that. And now everybody does it and has accepted to do it. Well, at least I hope you guys have. And the idea behind that is really learning how to learn, and flexibility are essential tools for you to have in order to build your career. And you can use them whether you're 30, 40, 50, 60 years old, and you might be working for a long time, and you'll need to have that. So yeah, completely concur with what Emily just said.
Okay, thank you again. The next question is about the skills that one needs to develop in order to achieve a high employability rate. So if you had to pick maybe a couple, Emily, what would that be besides, of course, the flexibility that we have been talking about during this debate?
Yes. Well, when you talk about skills, you can think about hard skills, soft skills, motivation skills. I won't spend too much time on hard skills because I think that hard skills are very moving and changing over the time. So relevant hard skills today won't be the relevant hard skills in 5 years or 10 years. So to go back on what Mark was saying is learn how to learn. This is the best hard skill you can have. Regarding the soft skills and the motivation skills, as a recruiter, or in my current job, I meet quite a lot of candidates, and what is really important is from the motivation side is to meet people. When you are a candidate, is to have a real motivation. I mean, when you choose a company, choose a company with who you are aligned in terms of values, in terms of patience. The sector is something that is bringing a lot of interest to you. Choose a company because you really believe in this company. If you choose a team with who you really feel like working. And this is very important because no motivation or fake motivation in an interview is really tangible. It's something that is easy to see, and you won't be happy in your job and you won't be taken for the job, probably anyway. This is from the motivation side. From the soft skill side, we talked a lot about flexibility and agility, so I won't go back on that. I think that the other skills that are very, very important today are collaboration and teamwork. We are stronger working together than working as individuals in silos. So I think that communication and teamwork is very important. And problem solving and some critical thinking is also very important. And those soft skills are also, I think, something that you develop a lot when you have an international background. Mark was saying that previously, problem solving is not the same approach in every cultures. So having the chance to see problems from different perspectives makes you so much more imaginative, so much more relevant, and so a better candidate and a better employee then. So agility and flexibility, of course, collaboration and teamwork, and problem solving.
Mark, what's your intake?
Me on what Emily just said. You said, you mean?
Yes. So what are the top skills that are needed for a high employability rate?
I'm not going to be able to add much more to what Emily just said, because I completely concur with what she said. I mean,
that was very complete. Thank you.
It was.
Okay, I will still ask the question to Emily, because we're going to talk about being a national from another country. For example, we have a lot of Italians here today, a lot of nationals from Spain. So what happens when they apply to a job in a French company?
Yeah. Well, from the good news is that from an administrative point of view, being European.
Did we lose Emily?
Emily, we just lost you for a few seconds. Can you repeat? Administrative point of view.
Can you hear me well now?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know what happened.
Return to the administrative point of view.
Yeah, from an administrative point of view, the good news is that if you are a European, today you have the chance to work in any European country, which is a great opportunity, and there is absolutely no constraints for any European individuals. The less good news, if we talk about France, is that depending on the environment, not speaking French can be a barrier. We were talking about that with Natalie previously, and depending on the company you will choose, not speaking French can be a barrier. If you join, for example, a big traditional French company, you can meet, unfortunately, again, many people not speaking English fluently, and so having French as the normal language, professional language within the company, so it can be a barrier. On the contrary, now I'm more working in a startup environment, and within the startup, the great majority of them use English every time, and they have many nationalities. I met a startup last week. There are 30 people, and amongst 30 people, they have more than 10 different nationalities. And that's now the way startups are working more and more. So it can be a barrier in some environments. It's not a barrier in other environments. And I guess that it will be less and less a barrier, because English is becoming mandatory in any environment.
I believe the practically speaking, it's true for all countries, and knowing at least some of the local language is important. And then sector by sector, I'd say in the tech sector or in the biotech sector, there's a number of sectors in which you can go in today where, regardless of where you're from, it doesn't really matter. English is usually the common language, and the plus is to speak the local language, whether it be Spanish, Italian, or French, depending on what country you're going to, will be a plus, but it's not mandatory. And administratively speaking, as Emily said, it's not an issue.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Remember, we are getting a few questions already. We're going to begin soon with those. Remember that you need to use the Q&A section. Let's move to the next question that I would like to still address to Emily and Mark, which is also something that we've been discussing all year, it seems, remote working. So how does remote working become a game changer, change the recruitment strategy in companies? Mark,
Emily,
please.
you want to address that first? Do you have an answer for that? Or
yeah, I can give you my point of view at least. I think that remote is existing for a decade, but it is thanks to, or because of, I don't know, but I will say thanks to this pandemic, that for many people it has become a reality, because many companies didn't practice remote work before the pandemic we are living today. And I think that it will change deeply, and for a long time the way we work, and remote will become something usual for many companies. And I think that it's a great opportunity for everyone. I think that it's a great opportunity for companies, because they were selecting their talent in a local talent pool, the city, the region, maybe the country. And now they have access to a worldwide talent pool, which is a great opportunity. And on the other side, from candidate point of view, it's also a fantastic opportunity, because it's the same. They were applying for local, national, maybe opportunities. And now people will more and more be able to apply for international opportunities. And once again, having an international background, speaking different languages, makes you a very good candidate for working remotely and for any company in any country.
I think this remote working discussion could be a webinar of its own. Let's move forward, because we can talk about it for a long time. Mark, do you think that joining ESCP could help one's career as a manager or a developer in the sense of expansion of companies?
Well, yeah, I'm going to bounce back on what Emily just said, because I think it's super interesting. The opening of the talent pool, it's done both because of the online webinars and Zoom and Google Meets and everything of that sort. And the advantage of going to ESCP is what Natalie mentioned earlier, is that there's 6 different campuses throughout Europe. And the idea is to study on several of these campuses in order to open up visions and understanding of different markets. So on the one hand, your pool of candidates, or the pool of people that you're going to manage, is going to be much wider if you've had that exposure. And then on the second level, that's the first level. And the second level, when you're in the development mode, when you're expanding your company, I saw that in one of the questions, there's Andrea, I think is starting a company. That will be super helpful for Andrea to be able to know the cultures of different other European countries. And that's going to help, Andrea open up and develop their company. So on 2 different levels, whether it be internal, the management, better understanding how to manage your people, understanding different cultures, and working on a bigger pool of people is one aspect. And the other aspect is being able to do business development in different countries and reaching out to a much wider market than the one you're on.
Okay, that's very interesting. Andrea, if you have if you need any more details from Mark, just let us know. I will just ask this last question to all of our speakers, Emily, Mark, and Natalie. What are the most valuable education diplomas in Europe? What's your opinion on that? And when is the best time to start a program that fits one's ambition and background? So I will start with Emily. Do you have any tips on that?
Maybe Natalie could give us I think that she will be more relevant than I, because she has a very large view on all the diplomas. So I would be interested in having Natalie's answer first.
I think it's a great question. Actually, a lot of students come to me and ask, so what should I study so I can then, apply for a master at your school? And my advice is always that we don't have a list of schools or a list of programs that we want to recruit from. You have to find your own path, and you have to really go for something that suits you. So you shouldn't go for an education if it's not a topic that you're really passionate about, and it's only maybe your parents push you to, go down that path, or your friends, or you really have to take the time to think about, what you want to do with your life. And then I think all the pieces can be moved together to go towards that goal. But of course, depending on your career plan, you have a lot of different programs that you can choose from in business schools. So for example, at ESCP, you have a number of specialized programs, and you have also general management courses. And I think depending on if you know exactly what you want to do in the future, or if you're not completely certain, you already have a choice of if you want a generalist program or a specialist program. And then it's also depending on how much work experience you have. I get the question if I should apply for a master in management, should I apply for an MBA? Those are also different programs suited to different types of profiles. And if you don't have any work experience, then you should go for a master in management. If you have 4 or 5 years of experience, maybe you can consider an MBA program, for example. But I think generalist program, they give you a chance to try different topics. You usually cover all the disciplines, of management and business. So you go over finance and marketing and all the different fields, and then you can maybe decide, which one you feel more interested in. I know some students have sometimes a very precise idea about what they want to do, and then when they get their first internship, their first work experience in the field, let's say, for example, I want to work in finance, I want to work in a marketplace, and then they do a 6-month placement in a marketplace in a big financial institution. And after that, they think, well, this is not for me. So before you also launch your career, I think you have a great opportunity when you join a business school to really try different subjects, try as much as possible to gain work experience in different fields and different roles, just so you can confirm that maybe your first choice was the best one for you, and maybe you can also change your mind. It's, I think, a great environment for bouncing ideas off of each other, as we mentioned earlier with Emily and Mark, that you have a very diverse class regardless of the program that you choose. A lot of diversity in the teaching style also of different faculty members. So I think you really can gain from that. Yeah, so that's my advice. But I think you have to really think about your own preferences and your personal ambition first, and then you can find the right program and the right school for you.
Thank you very much, Natalie. I will take the opportunity that you're talking about the programs, specifically about the Master in Management. Paolo would like to know, besides the GMAT score and of course his grades during his bachelor, what else does he need to provide you with? What can you advise him regarding the documentation?
Well, I think the main factor for us will be that he needs to have an international ambition, I would say. As you understand, we explained earlier that it's very much the identity of the school. They're going to be expected to study in at least 2 different countries for the Master in Management, up to 4 different countries in the span of 2 years. So definitely to have an international project in mind. Then the work experience, even though we don't require previous work experience because we have many candidates in this program, what can make you stand out from the other candidates is if you already have maybe an internship or 2 on your CV that can help also your make your application stronger. The fluency in English, obviously, that's the main working language in the school, so everyone needs to have that fluency in English. Any additional European language is more than welcome, since you also get an opportunity as a student to sometimes have classes in the local language. So if you're interested in a specialization in Berlin, for example, we have some specializations in German, in Spanish in Spain. So if you know any other languages, it can be a plus, of course, in your application. And then we ask for a resume for 2 references. So ideally, 1 academic and 1 professional, if the student already has some work experience. Yeah, and a very strong motivation. That's very much the.
Natalie,
Wait, yes.
do you confirm that there's a interview process as well?
Absolutely. There is a first screening based on the application package. So we look first at all of the documents and the test scores and everything that's in the application. There is a first selection based on that. And then students who are invited for the interview, usually it means that you passed the academic bar, but now we really want to know more about you, your personality, your motivation, presentation skills. So during the interview, a lot is happening. And I'm sure, Mark, when you interviewed candidates for your specialized master, you also look at the personality. I think it's very important that to have that open-mindedness and willingness to learn from others, to be interested in new topics, to be interested in new cultures. You really need to have that curiosity. So we check that during the interview.
Yeah, the interview is an important part of the process. You have to come prepared for that. I hope that answers the question. I'm happy to answer Fatima's question if you want.
Yes, please do, Mark.
I'll give a very pragmatic answer to Fatima. The first company that I started when I was 22, 23 years old was a language school. So I was basically teaching English to French executives. So that's a pretty tough job. And the best way to learn a language, as far as I'm concerned, especially if you've already studied it a bit, is to have really close friends of that specific country. You want to learn Italian, you hang out with Italians, you find an Italian boyfriend, an Italian girlfriend, whatever it is you have to find, but you actually will learn a lot more by hanging out with people and really forcing yourself to integrate. And within weeks, you will actually see a huge progress. So that's my very pragmatic approach. Then obviously I can give you schools and places to learn and videos to listen to, but I strongly would recommend the first one than the second. It's much more fun.
Yeah, and if I can say, if I can add to it, I think you don't need to be shy of your accent. We all have accents, as you can hear. Sorry about that. We all have accents. So if you have an accent, it means you know more than one language. So don't be afraid to throw yourself out in the public. It shouldn't be a problem. Okay, Sarah Emily wrote us. She would like to know if you think there are any differences in HR techniques in different countries that you have been.
Well, of course, there is the labor law, which is different in each country. But when you learned the French labor law, then you can go to any country, because I think that is the most complicated on the world. And this is a hard skills, that is not a big issue, because, you know, to learn labor law, you have books, you have external expert lawyers that can help you. So the issue is not on techniques, is more on cultural aspects, and the culture is the main challenge when you practice HR in different countries. I can give you an example. I will always remember when I started working in Morocco, an employee came to me and say, "Hey, Emily, what are you planning for the Eid el-Kibir bonus?" Eid el-Kibir is the Shiite celebration. It's a religious celebration. And I was like, let me think, and I go back to you. I went back home, said to my husband, "What is the Eid el-Kibir bonus?" I asked to some other HR I knew in Morocco, and they told me, yes, it is something completely normal here in Morocco. Is a must. You need to give an amount of money to all the employees for this celebration. Okay, and then I had to convince my headquarters here in Paris that we had to unlock a budget to give the Eid el-Kibir bonus. So it was a concrete example of being forced to adapt and to convince that things in France are not the same in other countries, and we need to adapt, otherwise we do things badly. So it was an example.
That's really interesting. Never heard of that before. Thanks so much, Emily. We still have a couple of minutes, so let's talk about our students that don't really have previous work experience.
Questions there that are interesting.
Yes, those are very interesting. So, Mark, do you have any advice on finding an international internship after graduating a bachelor's degree and before starting a master's, when you don't really have previous work experience?
There's an expression in France that in French actually, that says that you can only be a prophet and not in your own country. You become a prophet in another country, but not your own. And to some extent, I think you have to play that role. That's for Polo and Paula, who asked very similar questions. And I think that ideally you find some pull, some way of connecting with companies, whether it be through people who know people or through LinkedIn. But oftentimes companies will be more open, I find, for first jobs or even internships with foreign people, because you come with a plus. You come with something that's not that other people don't have. So obviously, am I going to hire a Spanish person if I do absolutely no business in Spain? Probably not. But if I have some remote connection to Spain one way or another, or Spanish-speaking countries, then I'm super interested in either a first job or in an internship. So there's a little bit of research on your part, both in to aim for the right companies. There's a little bit of research to try to find links of people that can connect you to that company. But after that, I clearly think that you have an open, fair game in order to get both either a first-time job or an internship.
Okay.
Just maybe to complete what Mark was saying, I guess that ESCP provides you with the opportunity to do internships, and I think that those internships in your educational background are as important as the theoretical parts, and you really need to take advantage of those opportunities, because when you have 2-3 internships, you arrive with a very, very big strength in comparison with other candidates to get a permanent contract. So really, sometimes people are saying, okay, but I will earn a few money, and I will maybe I will make the coffee, and I'm not sure it will be interesting. It will be interesting if you are showing interest and motivation and showing that you can bring things to the company. It will be interesting. Of course, you won't earn a lot of money, but it's an investment to get a better job with a higher salary then. So take advantage of this opportunity. And one last thing is that there is not only the professional side. In your personal life, you probably have done many interesting things. Maybe you have created an association. Maybe you raised money to help your grandmother paying her pension or whatever. And every little things that you have done in your personal life have a strong link with your professional life, because you have developed soft skills, maybe even hard skills. So don't be shy of also explaining what you have done in your personal life, because I'm sure that it is plenty of very interesting experiences.
I was going to mention that, Emily, because maybe we think about previous work experience as something really hard, and maybe we forget that we have done voluntary work, or even we were a tutor at university. So those experiences are also valuable, and they can demonstrate your abilities and the kind of contribution that you could give to the company, your potential employer, right?
Yes, I can. Sorry, Lucy, I
Okay.
can add also something. I see a lot of candidates telling me, what do you think I should do between when I finish my bachelor and when I start my master's degree? It's not part of the mandatory curriculum to do an internship. I know it's really something that the business schools are looking into. So should I go for that? And I always encourage them to, if they want to take a gap year between their bachelor and their master, they can gain maybe some internships. Some of the students get an opportunity to sometimes go abroad also. And I think that's something that they can do. So I really encourage them to gain experience as much as possible. And any experience is valuable. So I think they sometimes get the impression that we expect them to have had an internship in a big company, in a big high-tech company, in one of the main consulting firm. And it can be interesting for us to have also practical experience. It doesn't necessarily have to be managerial experience. We know they're very young, and they don't necessarily have that that experience at that point. So, but any practical experience that they can have, we're really interested in it. So.
Okay, I would like to wrap up with Natalie. Shall we, and also Mark, of course, because he's the director of one of the programs, shall we mention for just 2 minutes, what are the application deadlines? Is it online? Are the classes going to begin also online, given the current situation? And also, if you could mention an email address for any further questions, it would be really helpful.
Well, maybe I can answer. I start to answer, Mark. Um, so, well, you have different deadlines for all of our programs, so I wouldn't be able to give you one specific deadline, but for some programs, we work with admission rounds. So for the specialized masters and the MIM program, you have specific dates within which you need to submit your application. And we have a September intake, one intake per year. For the MBA program, they work on a rolling admissions basis. So it's a little different, but then it's also a September intake. So they have to ask specifically for each degree they're interested in about the specific application deadlines. But then everything is online, of course, online application. As much as possible, we like to have the on-campus interview, but of course, right now it's not an option. So we do interviews on Skype or with using a remote software. And then, sorry, the last part of your question about how the courses are being delivered right now. So everything is online. Maybe Mark, you can complement what I'm saying, but we're ready to switch online when it's necessary. But of course, we prioritize on-campus and face-to-face interaction as much as possible. So.
Okay. Mark, anything specific to your program?
Well, specific, no, I think it's, the COVID is hitting everyone and not just our specific program, or my specific program. I think all the programs, and one of the things about ESCP is the ability to be incredibly flexible and reinvent itself. And I know that for my program, we are changing the way we're teaching. Instead of having 2 or 3 hour classes, we're moving them down to 40-minute classes, 1 hour classes maximum. So things are a lot more interactive, and we're taking advantage of the moments that we are not confined. And well, my course is essentially in France, but we also go to San Francisco, we go to Berlin as destinations, and we try to take advantage of those off moments to be able to regroup the students as much as possible. Obviously, as mentioned by Natalie and Emily throughout this webinar, there's just as much to learn from the other students than there is to learn from the teachers. So we're working really hard as teachers to make sure that the level of education is maintained both by the teachers and by interaction with other students.
Okay, I think that's a wrap up. We have already passed also a 1 hour webinar. I think it was very interesting. I want to thank our speakers, Emily, Mark, and Natalie, for their time, for dedicating this debate to the Doc City community. I hope that you all have enjoyed it. I want to remind you that tomorrow you will receive an email with the ESCP Business School information and with the context to further send your questions or concerns to our speakers and to ESCP in general. So any final words from our speakers besides, of course, good luck to everyone?
Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, stay safe, be safe, take care of yourself, take care of others, and thank you very much for coming out tonight.
Thank you
very much, and take care, everybody.
Thank you all. I'm going to say grazie from Italy. Sarah just wrote. I'm going to also try my French, merci, but it's not good.
Very cute.
Thank you, everybody. I hope you have a lovely evening. Let us know what you thought of the webinar. Send us an email or a message. See you soon. Bye.
See you, bye.
Ciao. Au revoir.